up, everybody? Welcome to SWAT MMA. My name is Jared. I'm here with Paul.
What up?
This is episode number 171, and today we're going to be talking all about UFC 292, Sterling versus O'Malley. We're going to be talking a bit about boxing. We're going to talk a little bit about Conor McGregor. Before we get to that and the other combat sports, though, you know what time it is. Grab your stash, fire it on up. Let's get into the weed of the week.
Smoke weed every day.
All right, so this week we have a very interesting strain. So this is actually a part of one of the top 10 strains of the summer. This is called Trop Cherry. It's a mixture of Tropicana cookies and cherry cookies. So, you know, you're going to have a pretty fruit-forward and citrusy kind of taste on that one.
It looks nice.
And this one is pretty cool about this is sold nationwide, so you can get this everywhere that they sell legal cannabis in over 456 U.S. stores. This strain is sold, so
Oh, that is tasty.
yeah.
That's
This is
nice.
also it's a hybrid, but it's sativa leaning hybrid.
That's what I prefer.
Yeah, me too.
If I can't get a full-on
You
sativa,
gotta get that duality.
yeah, I do like the hybrids that lean more towards the sativa rain. Yeah, that tastes real nice. What you got in the pen there too today?
This is some Twizzler made by Lit. Some live resin in the pen. They've been having this cool deal at this the dispensary down here that me and you always frequent, where they got these pens like these $20 deals they're doing like every Wednesday and Thursday or something like that. That they're doing half-gram pens for $20, eighths for $20, and grams of live resin, and it's always made by Lost in Translation, which is one of my favorite companies, anyways. So
Yeah, for real.
always picking those up.
You know who else has good deals right now?
Who's that?
Binoid. They sponsor this segment for us. And if you want to help out the podcast, you can use our links over on SWATMMA.com. You will get 15 to 20% off your order, depending on what it is. And you can find the best in CBD and Delta-9 THC products while they still remain legal. SWATMMA.com, Binoid. All right, dude. Oh, let's talk about the UFC's last weekend's main event, just for one reason, because we saw Vicente Luque make his comeback fight here after his brain hemorrhage against Rafael dos Anjos. This is at welterweight, where dos Anjos has had mixed results here lately, and we once again get a wrestling-heavy victory, but not for dos Anjos, as you might think, hearing that, but for Luque, who's never fought a fight like this in the UFC, frankly.
And it was only his second time in his UFC career going 5 rounds. And I thought it was a really interesting result, just because it's not that Luque isn't a great grappler, because he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. We just normally see him in the UFC in his last few fights handle things on the feet, and honestly, pretty much over his whole career has always kind of been handled on the feet.
He's been known for his entertaining striking.
Yeah.
But look, he gets the win here. Is he a different fighter, or is it just playing it smart?
Well, I think another thing that's interesting about what he did in there too is, and they kind of alluded to it in the broadcast, but Luque is the kind of fighter who's been fighting at 170 his whole career and is naturally at that light weight class. Whereas RDA, we've seen him bounce all over the place. We've seen him go to 55, 70. There was even wasn't there a time where he tried to chop to 45? Like, his body's changed over the years and like over his career. And I feel like we saw in that fight just a naturally bigger guy being able to handle and just be stronger than, you know, RDA, who kind of has, you know, he's had mixed, like you said before, had mixed results at 170. So he's kind of always dipped his toe in the water, but I don't know if he's ever really fully decided that like 170 is going to be his career move, or is he going to go to 55 and take a fight here and there, and if they go good or bad, he'll go back to 70 or back to 55. I feel like that kind of has always been, he's a tweener, you know what I mean?
Sure. Well, let's talk about Luque for a second. How come you don't think he faces the same criticism that Corey Sandhagen got for his victory a couple weeks ago, using a wrestling-heavy attack to gain a victory? And keep in mind that Corey Sandhagen tore his tricep in the first round and was compromised. Luque just decided to use a different game plan. I haven't heard anybody talking about
It
it.
is.
Dana White didn't get up and walk out,
Yeah, that was interesting. That's
etc.
interesting.
Is it just, was all that coincidence? Is that just the MMA sphere doing what the MMA sphere does because Corey was expected to do something different? Or
Yeah, I don't
does he
know.
get a pass because of this brain hemorrhage thing? People are like, oh, it's good he didn't take blows to the head.
Yeah,
He doesn't want to strike. They don't
it's
want
all
to talk
kind
shit
of.
on him.
I don't know. I think that a lot of people going into this fight with RDA didn't expect it, maybe. And it wasn't that they were expecting like the fireworks that maybe someone like a Corey Sandhagen brings.
Yeah, that could be.
And then also, I do think that when you look at RDA, I don't think he is really the super, you know, exciting and like known for like crazy finishes like both Sandhagen and God damn it, no, I'm blanking on his name. Who did Corey fight last week? Um, fuck.
Rob Font.
Rob Font, yeah.
Yeah, that's who we
Rob
fought
Font
last
is
week.
known for some really like pace level like striking where he breaks you down over five or 3 rounds, obviously depending on the fight. And I think that Corey was kind of known for that also.
Hmm.
Whereas like in this fight, RDA is kind of known to be more of a grappler and use grappling with his strikes, whereas like Luque was the only one who was really the super exciting striker, I guess.
Well, speaking for the majority of the MMA fans, honestly, I'm gonna take that label. I thought it was a pretty boring ass fight.
Yeah, it's kind of
It was
boring.
once again another pretty boring ass card from the Apex.
And there was a terrible robbery in the co-main event. Cub Swanson did not deserve to win that fight.
Even Cub Swanson didn't think he won that fight. I mean, he gets the decision unanimous.
Yeah, Hakeem Dawodu
Um,
got fucked.
it was very, very odd, but whatever. I mean, Cub gets the win, and all around, just not a very entertaining card. So let's move past that. Let's talk a little bit before we get to the upcoming fights. We had Anthony Joshua facing a late replacement in boxing of Robert Helenius, who, we just saw fight Deontay Wilder. Now there's talk, with AJ's victory, which is a TKO in the 7th round. And it was a pretty sick knockout, but it
Yeah.
did take him 7 rounds to get there. He did not set the world afire with his performance once again.
It's a really slow start.
And, he did the same thing in his last fight against somebody whose name I already have forgotten. I mean, let's be real here. And now he's talking about he wants to fight Deontay Wilder, which is a possibility on this upcoming Saudi card because we're going to get the Ngannou Fury fight.
Mm-hmm.
Wilder doesn't really seem to be doing anything. He was going to fight Ruiz, but that kind of just seems to have fell apart.
Yeah.
And maybe he's just going to wait for Anthony Joshua, which the timing would work out for first quarter next year if they were going to do that. But after seeing, Wilder, what starched Helenius in is either the first or the 2nd round,
Something like that.
is very violently and very fast. And seeing AJ take so long to do it, I don't think he can stop that lightning hand of Wilder's. I don't think his chin has the durability, and I just don't really think he wants that smoke. I don't think he stands a prayer.
Yeah, I think it's a tough matchup for him at this point in his career too, taking the losses to Usyk twice and obviously to Ruiz before. Like it's kind of a do or die if he were to lose to Wilder. It would kind of take him out of the upper echelon of the heavyweight division, I would say.
So I'm excited for the fight. Like, I'll watch it. Don't get me wrong. It's a great fight. They should
There's
do the
stakes.
matchup. I just think at this point, with what we've seen from AJ, and Wilder hasn't been very active since the Fury fights. He's just got
The one went
the
over.
one, but does he really need to do much more? We know who he is. He's still got it. If your
It really
name
just
isn't
turns in-
Fury, you're just not going to take those shots.
And also that it kind of just turns into what's the name that they want to put in front of him,
Mhm.
because he's kind of in a flux when you talk about where his career is at, just like Joshua is. And I think him and Joshua makes the most sense for both guys to make at least one more big like pay-per-view that doesn't necessarily have to be for a title.
Conor McGregor was at that fight.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor gets interviewed by old Gareth, and he makes a few statements. And he says that he is going to be fighting Michael Chandler in December still, as planned. Then he says he's going to fight Justin Gaethje for the BMF belt. Then he says he's going to do the trilogy with Nate.
Also said some other weird things as well.
Fill us in.
Basically, I don't know if it was. Here's my problem. I'll tell you the comments and I'll tell you my problem with him. So he said that he's going to fight KSI in a bare knuckle boxing match,
He did.
which is stupid as fuck. Because I don't even think that's a real thing. I think that's just him seeing what happened with Nate and Jake and seeing it like actually is something viable, like money wise, and then being a part of that little BKFC event he was back when when it was you know
Perry.
Perry and
The
all
big
that. That was just a
41.
great
Yeah.
night of him being part of like BKFC and everything like
Yeah.
that. And then seeing what that Nate and Jake card did, because that was I. There's no way that card
Well,
don't get me wrong, I don't like what they're doing, but there's no denial that Nate and Jake financially and commercially was a success.
yeah, all indications would say that shit for sure. But I mean, he can't bare knuckle box KSI unless he finishes up his UFC contract, and he's talking about later. But KSI is going to be gone from the scene by that time
But
because Conor ain't fighting nobody anytime soon. Let's circle back to what he says. This in the realm of possibility, which is Chandler, Gaethje, Nate. Let's just focus on Chandler. Do you really think that happens? He's missed the window to get into
yeah, but then also
USADA by December. So is he going to get the exemption? Is this what it's all about?
I don't even think he has to get the exemption, bro, because at the end of the day, USADA's not really a governing body of the UFC, man. Like as the UFC has
But USADA
leaned,
suspends people.
that they do, but as much as they've leaned on USADA for those suspensions and shit like that, the UFC also, and this would probably be the third or fourth time now, has bypassed everything USADA says when it comes to a large dollar amount being next to the fight. Like the whole thing that went on, like the UFC was helping John Jones get through all the arbitration, all the shit to get cleared
Yeah,
up
there's
by
the Brock
USADA.
exemption, and
Then
then
the
there's the
Brock
Islam
exemption.
Makhachev IV thing that
Islam.
is
There's
possibility.
all these all this shit
But
that the UFC
I don't know.
buries or
Oh,
gets exemplified by USADA for them to make money.
I can see him getting some kind of exemption like Lesnar did, I suppose, because the UFC can just do that. I think,
They can,
but
and that's what's gonna happen.
and Dana kind of let it slip when he was said
Said, "I don't
infamously
care
the
what
other day. He
USADA
was like, "I
says."
don't care what USADA says. Fuck USADA."
Yeah.
Then he had to backtrack on that a little bit, like, "Well, I didn't really mean that," but you did.
Yeah, you did though. You fucking did.
All right, let's say he gets that fight.
Chandler or Gaethje?
Let's say he gets the Chandler fight, and for the sake of any of this working out, he has to win that fight.
Yeah,
Which I think is
it's winnable.
it's winnable, but I just don't know. Conor's an enigma now. I mean, if this was Conor McGregor that had been in the UFC this whole time fighting, yeah, he'd whoop Chandler's ass. If this was a Conor that fought Eddie Alvarez, yeah, I'd go with him all day. I don't know. This is Conor on his Lamborghini yacht, fucking living the pimp life that we see everybody faking on Instagram. This dude's doing for real. And there's no denying it. So I don't know. Maybe he's putting in hella gym time too, but I don't know. Let's say he wins it though, and he goes against Gaethje.
I think Gaethje beats him probably. My problem with
I mean, he doesn't have to worry about the wrestling with Gaethje at all.
No.
I mean,
maybe
it's just going to be a stand-up
maybe he
fight.
just would do that just cause.
Wouldn't that be some shit if they fought and Gaethje takes him down?
That's what
Just
he did
start
against Fazeev.
Slamming 7 takedowns against him. Yeah, but for the first time ever.
That's what I mean.
That'd be crazy.
It's like, yeah,
I don't know. I don't think he can beat Gaethje anymore either. Gaethje's a fucking dog.
yeah.
I mean, I think maybe again prime Conor's different, but I just don't think that dude's around anymore.
Mm-mm.
I mean, look at Conor's fucking face, bro. You seen this dude lately?
It's
I mean,
pretty bad.
look at him in side-by-side comparison from what he looked like when he fought Floyd. Just his facial structure. Like, he's taken so many steroids or growth hormone or whatever the fuck he's doing that his face is different. Like, he doesn't look like the same dude. There's YouTube videos on it now, too. People are noticing this shit.
Interesting. I don't know. I haven't seen any of that.
Yeah. And it's not just because he shaved his beard. You know? So, I don't know. I would love to see Conor fight. I don't believe any of this is happening, though. Like, I don't think he's fighting Michael Chandler in December. Maybe if the views
think
were
Chandler's the most
crushing it
winnable fight.
For Tough, the views aren't crushing it for Tough. It's
Yeah,
better than
pretty
last
average.
season, and that's not really Conor's fault. It was not too many people outside of hardcore gives a fuck about Tough anymore.
And not only that, I think overall the fights themselves outside of last week's fight have not been like super duper interesting.
I haven't been watching it. I'm
And
not gonna act like I have.
it's also, I mean, I have,
The
but
Jason Knight fight we just
yeah,
watched before
I
here
have
was
vested
good.
interest. Though. You know what I mean? That's why.
Kurt Hollenbach, Jason Knight was a banger.
Yeah, it was a bang.
And I mean, you got friends on the show,
Yeah,
so
so it's like interesting, but outside of that, it's not interesting. Like they kind of fucked everybody over too because they brought in a bunch of prospects who have like 7, 8 fights,
It's a
and they're putting
terrible
up against
idea,
these
dude.
guys who have like 28 fucking fights.
yeah, and they
30
put them all on
fights.
this one team against the other team. I mean, they handicapped Connor with the newbies, and it's just what can you do? Not newbies, but like there's a
Prospect.
big difference between ex UFC fighters and guys who've never been there before.
Well, yeah, and that's usually what you get to face when you're in the UFC.
It's
When you're a
not
prospect. It's
Chandler's
usually-
team didn't win so many because Chandler's some kind of fucking genius.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and it's kind of something we'll talk about later in the show when we talk about the upcoming pay per view. But like a guy like Ian Gary is like that same thing. If you would have put him on the fucking Ultimate Fighter when he had 6, 7 wins, and you put him against a guy who's got fucking 30 fights, like okay, perfect examples. Jason Knight, his first fight in Tough, Jason Knight's got almost like fucking 40 fights in his career. The guy he fought was 7-3. Like, yeah, naturally he's gonna hit him with some ringmanship and some stuff that kid's
Yeah.
never seen, because that's what happens when you don't have tons and tons of octagon experience and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I feel like what you're saying kind of handicapped their whole team. It's just like, here's the biggest thing here's the biggest test of your life, and you got 2 rounds to prove yourself. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy.
and finally, before we circle into UFC's 292 pay-per-view, we had a BKFC event, BKFC 48 from Albuquerque, New Mexico, which saw New Mexico native, friend of John Jones, former training partner of John Jones. Is he still messing around with Winkle, John, and oh boy?
I think so.
So too, well, he fought for the inaugural BKFC flyweight title against J.R. Ridge. We're talking John the Magician Dodson, and man, first round TKO, another sensational outing by this dude. I mean, he's just overwhelming from the start. He's so fast, and he lands so many punches and bunches, and then he bounces right back out, Paul. It's fucking shocking. Like, he's dangerous on the inside, he's dangerous on the outside, and nobody can touch him, and he's blitzing these fools left and right.
He's one of those guys that we've kind of talked about in the past with this BKFC, like, kind of evolution overall since it started. He's one of those guys that has like a perfect like style for BKFC, man. The fucking speed he has and the precision he has and his ability to pop in and out, like you were talking about before, is it's just not seen in the sport yet. You know what I mean? He's fucking fast, man. Holy shit, he's fast.
And he's got power in there too. And his power combined with the speed that he's moving, I think he's going to have a long title reign. And BKFC would be wise to sign him to a few fights if they can, just like they did Mike Perry.
Well, they're letting him fight MMA also, because he was fighting in Risen like 6 months ago.
Yeah, they're being pretty lenient with their contracts, which is pretty smart on their part.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, before we talk about that, let's mention that Mike Perry did re-sign with BKFC.
Yeah, multi-fight
multi-fight deal. Very smart on their part.
I thought they would announce a fight with it, but
smart on his part as well, I think. Do you think UFC made him an offer? Do you think he tried?
probably.
Because I would think so. They liked him before, and he's made headline sense. He's beaten well-known fighters since, albeit in boxing and bare-knuckle boxing, but he's done it. I would think that they would have at least made an offer. And I think he's much smarter to stay with BKFC, frankly.
Well, I also do think that what it always should come down to, and what it probably did come down to in the end, is probably money. You know what I mean? This is prize fighting. You know, if you're getting offered that money, and also what I do like about Mike Perry's maybe position in the sport is now, if he were to come in, let's say he wins his next fight, wins the belt, he's kind of carrying the shield of bare knuckle fighting. Like, he's probably the most popular, most eyes are on him. Like, And if he's a champion on top of that too, like I feel like it's more important for him to become a face of an organization than to become another name on the UFC's roster
Yeah,
that
me
is
too.
interesting, but at the end of the day, they're still not
These guys are making their name
the
in a
guy.
new sport, and it's going to last.
There's a difference between being the guy and being part of the team. And
Hmm.
in Mike Perry's case, in BKFC, he's the guy.
I've heard
And
exactly one fighter complain about BKFC's treatment, and that was Thiago Alves.
yeah,
Nobody else has said shit, and they've had some big names come in there. Michael Venom Page comes in there and takes a fight. He's not leaving being like, fuck BKFC.
hmm
No, nobody is. Even Paulie Malignaggi comes in. He didn't leave bitter with his pay.
yeah,
Artem's bitter about all kinds of shit. He's not talking shit on BKFC, and that was even when they were smaller.
yeah.
Before they got that Triller cash.
hmm
I mean, I don't hear it, and I just think that's significant because we hear it all the time from the UFC fighters, for example.
Well, and yeah, you've had boxers come in, you've had people come in and not have really the exact result of what they expected it to be. Also, like Luke Rockhold and Paige Van Zandt and people
Sure.
like that who have like never gone out of their way to shit on the.
But you know what they're doing? They're not shitting on BKFC as an organization, even
Yeah.
though they're taking L's.
Mhm.
Like
And that speaks to how
Rockhold
they
wasn't too
do
happy
things.
with the experience because he got his ass kicked. He wasn't happy with the ass kicking, but he hasn't said shit about his pay, and he's
Yeah.
just famously talking shit on UFC. Because I think if there was any type of problem, he'd be like, "Yeah, fuck these guys too."
Yeah,
But no, and I just think that's significant,
it is.
and I'm happy to see it, and looking forward to more BKFC shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to getting these big fighters, and I hope they continue to get more.
I agree.
All right, dive into the big event upcoming as we end the show here. UFC 292 is Aljamain Sterling making the quick turnaround against Sean O'Malley in Boston. Got the hometown crowd for O'Malley. We got a handful of good fights, not a whole lot. It's kind of a lighter card, but it is top heavy.
Yeah. I'm just kind of looking over all these fights real quick. What would you say is the one you're most excited to see?
I mean, it's the main event,
Is
but
there any
let's
like
save
dark
that.
horse ones though that you're like
Oh,
really excited for?
Chris Weidman's making his return against Brad Tavares.
Yeah, that
All
should
right.
be interesting.
Tavares is coming off with the loss to Silva, the loss to Duplessis, and we all know what's up with Weidman. I mean, we
Yeah.
haven't seen Weidman since that horrible fucking shit with his leg.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just have mixed emotions about that. I'm curious how he does. Weidman's fall from championship level was shocking and quick, and now he's almost a forgotten piece of. Nobody talks about him. They talk about Silva. They talk about Anderson all the time. They talk
Yeah.
about fucking
Is
Izzy nonstop, but nobody mentions fucking Weidman. It's
Even
like he's
Bisping. I think
forgotten, dude.
people talk more about Michael Bisping being the middleweight champion
Absolutely,
than Chris
they
Weidman.
do. And it was Weidman who came along and fucked up Silva for real the first time. So,
Damn,
and the
that's
second
crazy.
time.
Those are really only been the only. Well, shit. There's only been 6 middleweight champions ever, huh?
I do believe.
Because, oh wait, no, I'm a modern UFC.
Modern,
obviously.
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, no, I'm fucked that up.
So I'm curious
There's a
about.
lot
Yeah,
more.
you're a little high right now, but that's all right. Chris Weidman, Brad Tavares. I mean, I don't even know who to pick because who knows what Chris looks like? Who knows what he's been doing? He could come out and be a beast. He could come out and be the Weidman of old. He's got all this time off, his brain injuries, if he had any, like any accumulated damage that he's had from not just his leg, clearly, but everything
that's-
else you take as a fighter that just builds up. He's definitely healed up from that now. It's not like he's been getting knocked around for the past couple years. He could come out a fucking new man. He could come out the Chris of old. He doesn't have a whole lot of fights, man.
Yeah, but it also could go the other way. It could also go in there and look like he hasn't fought in 2 years. Look
Yeah.
like he hasn't had hardcore training in 2 years. Doesn't look
But
like
I don't know about he's with Sierra Longo though. They don't fuck around out there.
No, I'm not
you
saying
know.
like in that realm. I just mean like ring rust wise. Like, look, just like sometimes what we see, and I'll use BJ Penn as a perfect example.
Oh,
He's so
that's
no,
rough.
because that's where Chris
He's
kind
not
of is
BJ
right now.
Penn, though.
He-
No,
yes,
BJ
he
Penn
is,
lost
dude.
8 in a goddamn row.
No, I'm talking about not at the end of his career. I'm talking. Let me finish.
All right.
When BJ came retired from the UFC and took like 3-4 years off, and then came back, and his first fight was against Yair Rodriguez.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was the beginning of the end for him.
Yeah,
Because
that was rough.
this is what I'm saying is if Chris Weidman comes in and Brad Tavares is just on a different pace level and a different like actual because Brad's although he's had some mixed results, Brad's been in the mix for the last 5 years, fighting some of the best guys in the world, and Chris has just had to sit on the sideline and watch everything. So if he comes in there and he's just not used to that same pace that he once fought at and that same like level that he was fighting at before, this could be the beginning of the end.
Oh, it definitely could be.
Because what Weidman's like 36, isn't he?
Yeah,
37.
he's not young.
I hate to say it, but I think that's a very similar comparison. Because Weidman has had some real rough results since he lost the belt to Rockhold. Before he broke his leg, it wasn't like everything was all sunshine and rainbows, and then he broke his leg and derailed his. Uh, Weidman's career leading up to him breaking his leg was not like something that was just all sunshine and rainbows. He had some real tough outings that had happened, and then he had won one or two and got back into the mix, and then he breaks his leg. So it's not that far fetched to think that this could be a very pivotal fight, and whether he continues his career or doesn't.
Depending on how much you believe in Chris Weidman, he could be a good value. He's sitting at about plus 225 as an average across the sports books right now. And if you think he's still got it, that could be the value bet of the card right there.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. It just depends basically because we don't have any evidence to base any betting on that other than your general feelings about Chris Weidman as a fighter. If you think he's going to come out and do it, then that could be it. Otherwise, avoid that one betting wise.
Yep.
But I'm really rooting for Chris here. I'm a Weidman fan, always have been. I hope he comes out and fucking does his thing, man. I like the team. He's teammates with Sterling. It'd be nice for everybody to come out and get a fucking win if possible.
Yeah, that too.
Marlon Vera is fighting Pedro Munoz on here at bantamweight. That's a privity. That's my new word. That's a pretty important match for Vera. He's going to want to pick up a victory here and remain in the title mix.
Yeah, and then this is also Pedro Munoz stepping in for what was supposed to be Marlon Vera versus Henry Cejudo and was originally the co-main event of this card.
Yes, Cejudo pulled out with a shoulder injury, which was ironic because he tried to get the fight with Sean O'Malley when Aljamain Sterling saying that he needed more time to deal with an injury, and it's just a little bit funny because he was calling Aljo a pussy.
Yeah.
And then he does the same thing. But I think fighters, you shouldn't fight injured. Like Duplessis is not fighting Adesanya in Australia, and that's smart. Don't take a fight with the champ on short notice if you're injured.
Aljamain Sterling's been fighting for 2.5 years now with a torn bicep.
Aljamain Sterling is underrated as hell.
Super it's crazy. But we'll get into that later.
We will, yes.
This fight
right now, Marlon Vera, Pedro Munoz. Look, Munoz hasn't looked too good here of late. I think Vera's going to eat him up and get right back on track.
Yeah, because I mean, Vera's had some kind of mixed results. You know, he was pretty much a fight away from that title going into that Corey Sandhagen fight, and I thought he got beat pretty handedly there.
Like, the odds makers see it about the same as well.
Yeah.
Vera's about a minus 180. Munoz is a plus 155, and I wouldn't bet that for nothing on Munoz. Absolutely not. But Vera's a dog. I think he's got a lot of fight left in him here career-wise, and he can make another run here up at the title.
Yeah.
So
135 is such a shark tank too. Like getting a win over someone like a Munoz would be a very quality win in a division that is full of just killers.
And regardless of what happens in the Sean O'Malley Aljamain Sterling fight, we're going to have a change in the title, it would seem, here after this fight, because all indications would say that Sterling's most likely to move up even with a victory. And clearly with a loss, that's what he's going to do. So it opens the door up for guys like Vera.
And he's got the history with O'Malley already.
For sure. Because you could see the UFC doing something like, if Sterling wins and vacates, they want O'Malley so bad they could feel that there's a story if Vera gets a big win here that they could do O'Malley Vera 2 for the title, especially because Sandhagen's got the torn tricep, and nobody's really wanting to see him fight. And then necessarily, it's not his fault, but he did what he had to do. But he didn't come out of there with a lot of people screaming to see him fight again.
Not only that, I also think people are kind of over the let's give Henry Cejudo as many chances as we can.
Dude, I'm not even fucking thinking of Henry Cejudo in this mix.
Yeah, but that's kind of
I
he's
mean, I know
staying in the
he's
mix.
there.
One person I do want to throw in there that we didn't though is I do think if Sterling steps away from the division, that Marab deserves
Oh yeah,
a
there's
title
Marab.
shot for sure.
Yeah, I could just see, and I could see Marab O'Malley as well, but I could also see the UFC rushing the Vera O'Malley storyline if they had any opportunity to do so.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I agree. Well, who do you ultimately have in the fight?
Vera,
Me too.
yeah, Vera by TKO.
Yeah, I think so. I think Vera gets a TKO, and I think probably in the second round.
Yeah, I would go second or third round with that action. Neil Magny stepping in to face Ian Gary
Short
at
notice
welterweight. Ian Gary's a fucking beast, man.
He's a beast, and he called for this Magny fight originally. Ended up being
He sure did.
ends up being this fight anyway. So that's all that really matters, I would say.
Yeah, he's really impressive. I mean, I like Neil. Neil's a dog. We all know that. Neil's got big balls. He's stepping up. He's fighting a really hot prospect who Ian Gary has impressed at every outing. As his competition gets higher, he continues to impress and deliver the same as he has against lower competition.
This is going to be a really big fight for Ian because I think if he does win this fight, you have to really start thinking about him as a contender in the division.
Well, yeah, and he's right up near the top of the card as well. He's in Boston, and he's an Irish lad. Boston is a famously Irish city. That's why O'Malley's there, getting the so-called home crowd. I mean, Ian Gary's an overwhelming favorite in the odds makers. He's minus 425.
I think that's a dangerous thing to be though, with a guy like Neil Magny, because he's known for this kind of stuff. The guys who come up in the division, everyone thinks is gonna be the next guy, and he just kind of shortens the hype train just a little bit, pumping the brakes just a bit.
Yeah,
What do
I
you
don't
got
think he's
Neil
pumping
at,
any
though?
of these brakes here, personally. I think he's going to get,
What are Neil's odds at?
they're plus 325.
I'll think about just throwing 20 at it just because. I think Ian Gary will win, but
That's that's probably worth a lower amount of money bet,
just cause. I like a good just cause.
I might
bet.
put a bill on Weidman because,
A bill on Weidman? You think it's that close?
I don't know.
The
I hate it.
side-
I hate it when I only bet a little bit on fights I'm confident
Yeah.
on, but I'm not confident on that Weidman fight. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's more of
sure.
a nostalgia bet. I'm not going to bet any money on that. I'm just saying. If I was, I'd bet a bill on him.
Billion?
Billy. They take that at the sportsbook when I roll in.
Good old Bill.
Billy. We did have Cody Garbrandt versus Mario Bautista on this card, but Garbrandt was injured. That shit got pulled off.
Oh, dude, I didn't know that.
Yeah, card's a little bit light-handed due to that. We've got Kurt Hollabaugh fighting Austin Hubbard for the finals in the Tough Championship as well on here.
Yeah, and then there will be the bantamweight Ultimate Fighter final on there also, but it obviously finishes the pre-recorded season Tuesday, which means you'll either get Conor's guy or Cody Gibson fighting in the finals.
Right, so there'll be one more on there from the Tough finale. So that will beef the card up a little bit, losing that Garbrandt fight. But as we get to the top, we do have the two title fights here. All right, as we've mentioned the main event, we haven't really said anything about the co-main event, which is Zhang Weili versus Amanda Lemos, and this is for the strawweight title. We do have Rose Namajunas leaving this division and going up to 125, and I think that has a big impact on the division and who gets next fight here after this, because I would think she would have been right in the mix. What do you think here? Initially, look at this. Amanda is 13-2-1. Wiley is 23-3. They're both about the same height. Reach goes a little bit towards Amanda, just a couple inches. We got a southpaw versus a switch. They're roughly the same age, roughly the same average strikes per minute. Who do you think's got the advantage here on this? And she's got that loss to Andrade. We're talking about Lemos here.
Yeah.
And then she does have the win over the Karate Hottie and then over Rodriguez.
Yeah, I don't really know how to gauge this fight because obviously Weidli's only losses are to Rose, but I don't know what version of Zhang Weili shows up to this fight because I think sometimes she looks like she's right up there in the women's pound for pound list, and obviously she is. But I mean, with like the dominant side of things, whether because there was that big run she went on earlier in her career where people were saying that, oh well, the fight maybe isn't Valentina versus Amanda. Maybe Zhang Weili needs to go up and fight the bullet. But now
Yeah, get out of
it
here.
that's what people were
I
talking
know they
about.
were.
But I'm just saying that like that was the general consensus when she first held the title. Now
Yeah,
that
when
we've
she beat Young
seen
Jacek
her,
for the first time,
yeah,
and then yeah, okay.
yeah, like and like I feel like now with the losses to Nami Yunus and what we've seen like where she's like human and what parts of her game, I think it's this division is seen like it's more open than it was before.
It,
Like I think Limos is not seen as like this huge underdog that she would have been seen had Zhang Weili still only had just the one loss in her career.
no, the Nama Yunus fights, we haven't. Here's my problem with Whaley is honestly we haven't seen that much here in the last 5 fights that tell us any more about her. She
Yeah.
comes in and she beats Young Jacek for the title. Okay, that was impressive. Young Jacek was a great champion. She's also getting older at that time. There's an argument to be made that she was past her prime because she basically left the sport shortly thereafter, after getting a second. Anyways, we'll get to that. But then she gets beat by Nama Yunus. Then she gets she gets that fight again, and she gets beat again by Nama Yunus. And then by circumstance, that terrible Carla Esparza bomb
Nami
fight
Yunus,
of
yeah.
Nama Yunus, loses the title. Carla Esparza gets it. So Wiley gets yet another win over who? Young Jacek again. But we already know she can win that fight. That wasn't any new information. We know you can beat her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she fights Esparza for the title. And look, I like Carla personally. I'm a fan. We all knew how that was going to go.
Yeah.
There's just certain matchups you can see like this ain't it.
Well, as a
MMA
champion,
math
she was
doesn't
an
add
underdog.
up with Nama Yunus beats Wiley, Carla beats Nama Yunus, Carla can beat Wiley. No, she's going to get run over,
Yeah.
and she did. But does that mean that Wiley is this unstoppable force that we all thought she was before she started running into Young Jacek's and Nama Yunus's? I don't know. I'm still not really sold. I'm not saying she sucks or anything. I'm just not sold that she could. I think she's gonna have her hands full with Amanda Lemos, is what I'm saying, and we could definitely see the title change hands.
And I
As a
do
matter of
think
fact, that's my pick.
I think Limos like her loss to Andrade like is not that big of a deal when you go back to back wins over Marina Rodriguez and then Karate Hottie in a division that kind of was stuck in that 3-person matchup you were just saying,
Yeah,
where it was like and Jacek fights Rose and Rose beats her, but then Rose wins, loses to like there was just this weird little top of the division matchup thing that we were stuck in where those 3 or 4 were the only people at the top of the division. Now with, you know, Joanna retired, Rose moving weight classes, and then, obviously Carla's still there, but that was a pretty, pretty,
styles make fights.
yeah, it was pretty bad. I'm trying to be nice about it, but it was pretty bad.
I know.
It was pretty bad. And I think this is a chance for someone like Amanda Lemos to really shake this division up and prove that it's not just the top and everybody else, but everyone else has been sitting back and watching and taking notes of these top of the division fighters. And this could be a lot closer than people are giving it credit for.
Well, she's a plus 250 underdog. Most of the sports books have Wiley at plus 300 or even greater. I mean, minus 300 even greater. I'm picking Lemos here, though. I think she's got what it takes.
I'll take
You're going
Lemos
to see a
also
new
just
champ.
because.
I think that's a pretty good bet too. If you're,
Maybe
at
I'll
plus
do that.
250.
Maybe I'll go Neil Magny and Amanda Lemos.
You could do a parlay with Weidman, Magny, and Lemos.
I'm actually calculate that right now because I have the Caesars app online.
I bet that pays out pretty sporty.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't see that fight between Wiley and Menelemos being like that tip like stylistically is not going to be the reason
Yeah.
that she loses.
So that would be a trifecta of pretty significant underdogs.
Fuck yeah, let's see what we got here. But let's move on to the main event while I do that.
Yeah, well, it's finally time for O'Malley's title shot. I mean, the UFC has been waiting for this for years.
For real.
I mean, they fast-tracked Conor. It's been a slower rise for O'Malley. But here we are. It's in Boston. This is his moment. I think the problem is he's going up against somebody who's extremely talented and still slightly underrated. And I don't know if O'Malley has what it takes to handle Aljamain Sterling's wrestling.
God damn it, they don't have that Ian Gary and Neil Magny fight on there yet.
That's too bad. But I think that's what this really comes down to is the wrestling of Sterling, which we saw on full display against Henry Cejudo.
Yeah, I think that the whole thing when you talk about Aljamain Sterling is people just love to hate him for some reason, man.
Yeah, I don't really understand it. A lot of it's just due to circumstance. But look, O'Malley's usually got length on people, but he actually doesn't here. He's got height. It's 5'11 versus 5'7. Sterling is a much shorter individual, but the reach is almost identical. O'Malley's 72 inches, Aljo's 71, and that's what actually matters.
It does. It matters in more ways than one, though, because I do think he doesn't have the striking advantage, but also the grappling advantage that Aljamain Sterling that he already has. I think it matters even more that he's the same length, wingspan wise, with uh, O'Malley. So even if O'Malley tries to keep him on the outside, he's still going to have a hard time stopping him from taking him down.
Yeah, I see this being played out kind of in the trend that we've seen here the past few weeks. Is going to be a wrestling heavy attack from Aljamain Sterling. I mean, I don't think he's going to immediately rush in for the double leg or anything, but it's going to start off on the feet like it always does. But over the course of 5 rounds, I think he's going to grind out a win using his wrestling to gain an advantage.
I agree, but one thing I do want to give, I'll give some credit where it's due. I do think O'Malley has a better jiu-jitsu game than people give him credit for. And one thing that's kind of circulated online about this fight is it's going to be a big, quick takedown for Aljo and a quick submission. And I think although Aljo will employ a real heavy wrestling, um, game, I don't think it's going to be something where he kind of just goes in there, takes him down, and subs him real quick. I think O'Malley's going to be able to maybe initiate some scrambles or at least keep him from just passing guard all super easy and moving from position to position with ease. It's going to be more of a scramble on bottom than people are thinking.
I agree. I think that's dead on. Um, I don't think it's going to be an easy fight. And I think that O'Malley could be champ at another time. Like if Aljamain does vacate, I still think there's plenty of time for Sterling to possibly take that title. I mean, for O'Malley, excuse me, to take that title. But I don't think he has what it takes at this time to beat who's essentially the greatest active bantamweight right now. Not just because he's the champion, but I think with his resume, with his skill sets, he's getting thrown on the pound for pound list a lot. I'm not calling him the GOAT like a lot of people are because, as we've often talked on the show, he's an active fighter. It's just too hard to do that right now. But he definitely holds the record for defenses. You can't deny it. And he's finding a way to win against world-class opposition.
And I do think Aljamain Sterling, his resume is super underrated, man. Like, yeah, he has a loss on Rice, but like outside of that, he's pretty much beat everybody who's been considered the top of the division over the last 5 years. There's no one you can really look at and be like, oh, he's a champion, but he didn't fight this guy, and maybe that guy would have beat him. No, he's fought everybody. He's fought the Dillashaw's, everybody.
It's not his fault Dillashaw came in slightly compromised.
Sandhagen, Dillashaw.
He smoked Sandhagen.
Rivera.
What was that, like a half-a-minute fight?
Munoz. Like,
yeah.
Aljamain Sterling is by far the most underrated champion in the UFC. And people have this super bad taste in their mouth because of that disqualification win that got him the title in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is not only the man has a record for defenses now, but he also righted that wrong when he fought Jan, and since then Jan has not looked the same.
No.
So he cracked the code on how to beat Peter Yan, and if you look at every single time he's lost since, it's been in very similar fashion.
Yes.
Whether it's how he lost to Marab, I mean, I don't think he lost to O'Malley, but kind of when he fought O'Malley, he tried to turn the table and become the wrestler, and it didn't work for him. You know what I mean, so I feel like his confidence has been shooken since that loss to Sterling the second time, and I just don't think people give Aljamain Sterling the credit he deserves. He fucking out wrestled an Olympic gold medal wrestler in his
Yeah.
last fight over 5 rounds. Like, was hitting him with shit that just nobody does that to Henry Cejudo. Nobody
He took
hits Henry
Cejudo down
Cejudo.
5 times.
Dude, no one does that.
And Cejudo was only able to land 3 of 8 takedown attempts against Sterling.
Yeah,
It was very impressive.
super impressive, and just nobody gives him the credit.
Well, he's going to get the
deserves.
victory here. He's going to get some credit. Then he's going to go up, and he's most likely going to be Alexander Volkanovski's next fight. That's my prediction. He's going to get the victory. He's going to go up and get an immediate title shot, and that will be a very good fight. I'm stoked on that fight.
I think so too.
But first, let's see how it shakes out. What is your pick? Is it? I'm picking decision. Sterling 5-round.
Yeah, I think Aljo wins. I think Aljo wins a 5-round decision, 50-45.
Oh, he's going to get every round?
Every round. Every round.
All right. Sportsbooks see it about the same. For the last one, we've got O'Malley at about plus 220, minus 260 for Sterling. About sums it up for me. I think that's how it's going to go.
Yeah, me too.
Excited for the card, though.
Me too. I think this is probably one of the better cards that they've had the last couple pay-per-views.
Yeah, definitely.
Word. Well, I think that wraps our show up for today.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks to Binoid. You can find great deals on their products, like we mentioned earlier during Weed of the Week, at our website, where you can also find deals for the UFC store on various products that they have just dropped this quarter. Where's all that located at, Paul?
SWAT MMA.com, where you can also head over there and kick the gear button, and then you can buy a T-shirt and support the podcast. Then head over to Instagram and follow us at SWAT MMA Podcast.
See ya, everybody.
Peace.